The mastermind undoubtedly resides locally around Tucson, possibly even blending seamlessly right into that exact community. Locals have endlessly whispered this chilling suspicion from day one, especially when staring at Nancy Guthrie's main entrance. That entryway remained bolted tight behind a massive wrought iron Diablo barricade built for absolute maximum protection. It was engineered precisely to prevent such horrible tragedies. Yet investigators found absolutely zero signs of tampering, picking, or violent smashing. 52 nights have passed since an intruder breached this estate under the cover of utter darkness. While the city slumbered, a frail 84-year-old cardiac patient dependent on a pacemaker was snatched entirely away. The kidnapper navigated a deeply fortified fortress flawlessly, completely bypassing the chaotic mayhem a random burglar would normally unleash. Splintered wood and loud crashes were completely absent, prompting her relatives to post a $1 million reward for Nancy's safe return. Federal agents chipped in another $100,000, pushing the community's total bounty beyond $1.2 million. Now, 52 days later, that fortune sits untouched alongside a glaring lack of arrests, suspects, or official motives. Yet one terrifying mystery has dominated this entire detective operation right from the very first moments. It remains the exact detail that local Pima County deputies intentionally dodged during official press briefings. Crime scene experts, veteran federal investigators, and terrified locals with matching security setups desperately want to crack this riddle. What was his entry method? That is hardly a figure of speech. It undeniably unlocks the whole case. Slipping undetected into a heavily armed household completely silently paints a remarkably clear, highly specific psychological profile of the phantom perpetrator. Random thieves smash glass, cause loud noise, and fumble blindly. Unlike an informed insider, someone previously welcomed indoors memorized the floor plan, perfectly mapping every deadbolt and the specific keys needed to turn them. Guesswork is entirely unnecessary when you hold the exact blueprint. An informant just surfaced with a bombshell tip, potentially shattering the official timeline regarding access to Nancy Guthrie's residence. Major news outlets haven't validated this intel yet, nor have police departments issued any formal corroboration whatsoever. But aligning this rumor with current federal tracking strategies reveals a flawless match across all their active investigative profiles. We intend to withhold that specific bombshell momentarily, simply because you desperately need crucial context first. Grasping its immense significance requires dissecting the grim choreography of the break-in, tracking the precise sequence of events, and analyzing the calculated premeditation, demonstrating what the abductor learned long before setting foot upon her porch. After realizing the sheer depth of surveillance conducted regarding the victim's deeply private sanctuary, her daily habits, and her digital surveillance systems, the unverified leak transforms from gossip into the ultimate missing puzzle piece. Dissecting this ghostly infiltration requires reviewing the chronology. As the mere timestamps prove, this strike was meticulously orchestrated beforehand. Witnesses spotted Nancy breathing for the final time around 9:45 at night, falling on January 31st, right after her son-in-law safely drove her back to her Catalina Foothills estate following Annie's family supper. She crossed the dark threshold, and the heavy deadbolt clicked shut. By February 1st, skipping a scheduled digital worship broadcast with a close companion raised the initial, terrifying red flags. Relatives met a chilling silence upon checking the property, immediately summoning local law enforcement. Authorities launched their sweep near midday, though she had already vanished into thin air long before. Detectives carefully pieced together a dark chronology between 9:45 at night and the manhunt's launch, noting Nancy's smart doorbell went totally offline near 1:45 in the morning. Purposefully cut, not simply broken. Nearing 2:30 in the morning, when her cardiac tracking app completely lost the biological telemetry link to her medical implant. Ponder the terrifying implications of that timeline. The digital eyes were blinded long before her physiological heartbeat vanished. Blinding the security system wasn't a frantic afterthought. It functioned as the primary tactical objective. Federal authorities dropped recovered lens snapshots on February 10th, bypassing the sabotage to finally expose the shadowy culprit's silhouette to citizens. A fully disguised guy wearing full-length clothes, tactical gloves, and a visible firearm rig strapped tight. Profilers categorized the suspect as an averagely built guy around 5'9" to 5'10", hauling a black 25-liter Ozark Trail rucksack, moving with chilling calmness. Zero panic drives his steps. He marches purposefully toward the threshold right before executing the most crucial maneuver, stretching toward the device. He deliberately obstructs the field of view with foliage, expertly controlling his own visual footprint. Later journalistic probes by ABC News, leveraging inside network contacts, unearthed a terrifying detail federal agents initially kept completely classified. That specific snapshot showing the unburdened prowler lingering near the target entrance was actually captured on a completely different night. The chilling truth is he stalked her before the kidnapping occurred. The intruder spotted the lens previously and vanished, only to return completely weaponized. He brought every tool required for the job. Pay attention to this fact. Laura, a longtime resident of the Catalina foothills with an identical barrier, brought this up while speaking on camera alongside News Nation reporter Brian Enton. The victim secured her entrance using a heavy-duty, heavily reinforced Diablo barricade. Once that specific metal door locks shut, breaching it quietly is impossible, as any forced entry leaves massive destruction behind. The neighbor made her stance crystal clear. Bypassing that kind of heavy steel barrier from the exterior is simply an impossible task for anyone. When you install that level of extreme protection on your main entryway, nobody is ever forcing their way inside. I was literally chatting with a professional protection expert just 2 or 3 weeks prior to this nightmare. Ex-FBI specialist Maureen O'Connell examined the evidence extensively on Brian Enton Investigates, ultimately arriving at the exact same chilling deduction. Her authoritative evaluation indicated a disturbing reality, meaning the 84-year-old was manually hauled from her heavily fortified property, an operation demanding multiple suspects, especially assuming they knocked her out completely cold before fleeing. Both terrifying hypotheses align perfectly. A lone suspect dragging a victim is feasible. Honestly, sliding someone inside a heavy canvas tarp or thick quilt works rather effortlessly. Well, maybe not completely effortless, yet Laura believes an intruder lurked indoors long before the disguised attacker approached the porch. The stranger never attempted to breach the lock. The man just lingered outside, anticipating his partner would unlock the threshold. O'Connell insists this dark scheme required at least 2 highly synchronized criminals. Authorities from the Pima County Sheriff's Office refuse to confirm any signs of breaking and entering. Their strategic silence remains incredibly intentional. However, piecing together the pristine metal door and the multi-suspect framework, alongside the calculated lens tampering, points to a singular truth. Nobody blindly fumbled through a bolted entryway blindly during the night. The assailants possessed absolute certainty regarding what awaited inside. Then came the extortion letters packed with terrifyingly intimate details. 4 days following the kidnapping, a threatening message reached KOLD, a regional Tucson broadcasting network. Right around 5 in the evening, shortly thereafter, another local newsroom obtained the exact document. 12 hours later, TMZ acquired the threat. Federal agents and Pima County deputies quickly released a unified press release acknowledging the letter while actively verifying its credibility. The extortionists still wanted approximately $6 million. However, the chosen cryptocurrency shifted. The text explicitly threatened to alter the ransom amount if the initial timeline expired. Ignoring the final cutoff meant far graver repercussions for the captive. Police purposely refused to publish the complete transcript of these terrifying demands. This highly calculated censorship speaks absolute volumes. Detectives routinely conceal precise extortion details to protect crucial verifying facts. These are secrets exclusively understood by the true mastermind. Such hidden clues act as the ultimate litmus test, allowing cops to expose fraudulent confessors while identifying the real culprits. Yet, News Nation reporters uncovered an undeniable fact, which was subsequently verified straight from the mouths of commanding police officers. The first extortion letter contained highly specific mentions regarding the victim's Apple Watch and a particular exterior illumination system, which authorities kept totally classified at the time the message surfaced. Allow that terrifying reality to sink in. The blackmail document specifically named her Apple Watch, completely avoiding generic electronic descriptions or random assumptions. Her Apple Watch, her exact wearable gadget, alongside the property's security lighting, remain totally absent from all early journalistic coverage of the crime, entirely concealed by the task force, and completely excluded from civilian knowledge before the threat was ever delivered. The anonymous author possessed this insider intelligence. The sender held these secrets long before the police department unsealed the files, proving the blackmailer either personally scouted her residence beforehand or acquired the precise blueprints from an incredibly close inside source. Suddenly, this piece of paper transforms into something far more sinister than standard extortion. It turns into undeniable proof of stalking, showcasing calculated premeditation, demonstrating the perpetrators deeply studied her private routines, infiltrating her digital and physical boundaries in ways utterly impossible to glean by merely peeking over a backyard wall. Subsequent threatening dispatches materialized as the agonizing weeks dragged on without answers. Weeks later, TMZ secured another letter, which founder Harvey Levin publicly characterized during a CNN broadcast as significantly more gruesome and disturbing than the original. The extortionists still wanted approximately $6 million. However, the chosen cryptocurrency shifted. Levin admitted the complex financial routing completely surpassed his technical expertise. Meanwhile, former tactical unit leader Bob Krieger, a seasoned veteran commanding dangerous Arizona sieges who previously led the Pima County Sheriff's Squad. Listen closely, the expert who spoke to Parade magazine dropped a bombshell, claiming the real kidnapper probably never penned those letters. Here is exactly why. Real kidnappers always offer proof that the victim is alive, validating their ransom requests to guarantee a payday. These messages completely lacked that evidence. Cryer pointed out a constantly ignored fact: even letters from folks barely connected to the crime are absolutely vital, an individual holding just a fraction of the full picture. A suspect who knew to mention the Apple Watch but lacked actual proof of life, meaning the feds still desperately need to track this informant down. The logic is actually quite simple. The letters were packed with extremely secretive details. Whoever drafted them either pulled off the kidnapping directly or associated closely with the culprit, proving they had definitely infiltrated Nancy's private circle. Surveillance on January 11th and January 24th, one specific day, has been lingering in the shadows of this massive hunt for weeks now. Authorities repeatedly brought it up while interviewing nearby residents, yet they refused to officially explain why it mattered so much. For almost a month, everyone wondered about January 11th. News Nation reporter Brian Anton finally became the very first journalist to drag this timeline out into the open. During his March 16th broadcast, he revealed that federal agents had requested security tapes from a neighbor for two highly specific days, those being January 11th and January 24th, 20 and 17 days before Nancy vanished. Hunting for evening ring footage from January 11th, which was a massive new clue. This timeline clearly predates her actual disappearance by a lot. The true meaning behind that particular day remains a total mystery. Throughout 3 weeks prior to the kidnapping, an event occurred or a stranger lurked around her property on January 11th that detectives linked directly to the crime. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos later made a statement. He assured NBC News that January 11th held massive importance for the investigative team, though he kept the exact reasons completely hidden. Then on March 21st, 3 days prior to this recording, the Guthrie family released a plea begging Tucson locals to focus heavily on the investigation once again. The family urged nearby residents to dig deep into their recollections, scan through security clips, read old diary entries, and verify text logs, while simultaneously providing 3 distinct timeframes to check. January 31st, the early dawn of February 1st, and, in a brand new public revelation, the late-night hours of January 11th. This marked the absolute first time her relatives openly discussed January 11th, specifically narrowing it down to a late-night window. Detectives absolutely never point the public toward an exact night and date during a missing persons case unless they have a rock-solid reason. Such extreme accuracy proves they spotted something huge hidden within the collected clues. An incident took place late at night on January 11th that authorities firmly believe ties directly into Nancy's tragic fate. Breaking down the family's plea in a later broadcast, Brian Anton called the January 11th mention the most critical breakthrough they had seen in over a month, pointing out how emphasizing the exact hour was a totally unprecedented piece of intel. far exceeding the details cops had shared while knocking on doors, and adding that a front-facing Google Nest lens caught something wild. It turns out a snapshot of the perpetrator grabbed by that front doorbell lens was indeed taken on January 11th. If you combine the January 11th clue with ABC News revealing the culprit approached Nancy's porch before the actual kidnapping night, spotting the lens and retreating only to come back fully equipped, a terrifying routine emerges. The attacker clearly took several trips to study the grounds, mapping out exactly where the security devices were installed, calculating schedules rather than just guessing, and verifying a floor plan they already seemed to know intimately well. The ultimate mystery the Bureau is slowly piecing together, judging by their gathered clues and constant interrogations, is quite clear. Who exactly possessed enough inside knowledge of this house to run stealth missions while remaining confident they could effortlessly slip inside? The federal agents are zeroing in entirely on previous entry access. Even though authorities have aggressively shielded their most crucial findings, the sheer scale of the ongoing federal probe, combined with their aggressive neighborhood interviews, silently paints a very clear picture of what happened. Brian Enton has broadcasted from Tucson since the hunt began, maintaining a heavier boots-on-the-ground presence than literally any other reporter covering this tragedy. Sometime around the beginning of March, he shared that the feds marched back into the Catalina foothills purely to interrogate locals about a resident who relocated just before Nancy vanished. The journalist made sure to clarify that this specific line of questioning didn't automatically brand the former tenant as guilty. However, the authorities were undeniably obsessed with gathering details about that sudden departure. Informants told me detectives are aggressively digging into one specific property where the occupants packed up right before Nancy disappeared, tracking their every move. Listen up, because leaving absolutely zero stones unturned is exactly what they were doing here. Detectives also started hitting up nearby properties that were actively getting built from the ground up. They demanded logs of every single laborer stepping foot on those sites during the critical weeks right before January 31st hit, showing a highly calculated search approach. This definitely wasn't some random door-knocking campaign without a clear goal in mind. Authorities zoned in on clearance levels, hunting for identities, exact schedules, and anyone holding valid excuses to lurk around the estate at specific hours. Around mid-March, major television networks revealed that detectives secured hidden video feeds pointing toward the rear lawn, the swimming area, plus multiple lenses monitoring the main driveway entrance. These recordings caught relatives, groundskeepers, and maintenance crews going about their business shortly before the kidnapping went down. Law enforcement officials publicly stated that none of this visual evidence threw up any immediate red flags. Yet, pay attention to the ultimate result: a solid roster of individuals holding rock-solid, proven alibis for hanging around the victim's sprawling residence. These were folks completely aware of where the lenses pointed and fully familiar with the heavy-duty entrance barriers. Federal agents absolutely aren't gathering this intelligence just to check off some bureaucratic box. They compiled these files hoping to spot a missing player, or perhaps somebody who belonged on that payroll way back before things went sour. Then our informant steps into the light with the resident employee theory. But hold on a second. Full disclosure is critical here. This upcoming allegation originates from a solo social media profile boasting 111,000 impressions on one solitary update. Neither the Federal Bureau nor the local sheriff's department has officially backed this intel with any kind of stamp of approval. Traditional journalism networks haven't verified it either. So we are throwing this out as a developing theory needing deep examination, rather than undeniable truth. Absolutely nobody gets personally identified or blamed within this broadcast, and we will clearly mark all guesswork as we proceed. So, let's dive into the core revelation. An online tipster operating as JLR Investigates dropped a bombshell update that quickly racked up over 111,000 total impressions. They pushed a narrative completely ignored by major broadcasters. Yet it is spreading like wildfire among armchair detectives obsessively following every single detail. The exact explosive statement goes something exactly like this right here. Supposedly, an overseas medical aide resided in the victim's secondary cottage before being suddenly terminated a couple of years prior to the vanishing. A follow-up comment seemingly written by the exact same user suggested this guy might have held on to his own physical entry pass. That totally explains his seamless entry into the estate. But let us pause right there. Accuracy is everything when breaking down these rumors. especially considering an 84-year-old grandmother remains undiscovered while cops relentlessly grind away at solving the mystery. Zero validation exists from federal task forces regarding this rumor, and local county sheriffs remain totally silent on the matter too. You won't find major television networks like NBC, Manin, B, Say, or Fox backing up these wild online allegations either. Our sole origin point remains an isolated, unverified profile currently operating on the internet. We absolutely cannot prove this person possesses actual police connections or secret informants. Though we undeniably know the post hit 111,000 screens, this specific chatter sparked massive debates within digital sleuthing circles obsessed with the mystery, while the actual core allegation still holds heavy weight. Comparing this wild tip directly against the concrete maneuvers executed by sworn officers reveals something incredibly fascinating. It aligns perfectly with the exact suspect framework federal agents are publicly outlining right now. Though we refuse to point fingers or dox anyone, we view this strictly as unvetted intelligence dumped by an outsider, demanding rigorous vetting from seasoned law enforcement professionals. However, it forces authorities to confront glaring blind spots. And this is exactly why detectives need to take a much closer look at the concept. An on-site employee firmly rooted in the victim's backyard cottage, rather than just some handyman dropping by for routine afternoon maintenance tasks, changes everything. They possess a profound intimacy with the grounds that totally eclipses whatever basic knowledge a passing gardener or cleaner might ever pick up. Someone permanently residing there completely understands how the household breathes at 2 in the wee hours of the night. These insiders memorize hidden electrical panels and deeply understand the specific locking mechanisms attached to every single entryway. They figure out which bulbs spark automatically versus manually, mapping out security lens blind spots over months of casual observation rather than rushed scouting missions. Furthermore, they are highly educated on the exact technological gadgets the victim utilizes daily. They monitor her nightly charging habits, notice if she wears her smartwatch to bed, and perfectly predict her evening blackout schedule. Their spatial awareness of the estate runs so deep they could probably navigate the entire floor plan blindfolded half a decade later. Plus, holding on to an original pass or cloning, one eliminates the whole mystery surrounding how the heavy-duty entrance was eventually bypassed. Smashing your way past a military-grade barricade becomes entirely unnecessary when you possess the magic unlock code, which explains that specific smartwatch mention in the blackmail letter. Not to mention the highly classified information regarding the outdoor illumination system that cops kept completely hidden from the press. You simply cannot glean those hyper-specific facts just by creepily spying on the massive mansion through the perimeter fencing. You cannot just guess these chilling facts without actually breathing the air inside that house or sleeping right down the hall. Federal agents must shift their immediate focus away from merely confirming if a past residential employee was actually real. Instead, they must ask, has this specific individual already popped up during the massive background dragnet authorities recently compiled? Think about it, if investigators thoroughly interviewed every single soul who ever brushed shoulders with her inner circle, then entirely missing that crucial identity actually becomes a massive clue. Ex-federal operative Harry Trombus, who continuously offers vital public insights and remains a highly vocal expert analyzing this bizarre mystery, shared his thoughts with Yahoo News recently, explaining how personal bonds naturally rot away. A former confidant guarding private matters might easily betray that trust, particularly with $1,200,000 sitting on the table. He basically implied whoever talks fast collects the massive payout. Should anyone recognize this identity, or if an Arizona local crossed paths with this mysterious staffer during their shift, heard the insider gossip, or witnessed their bitter departure, that opens the door to claiming the ultimate cash prize. Listen, we must examine their exact access habits, be it strolling straight inside or sneaking past the back vehicles. Holding a master pass changes everything. Let us break down exactly why possessing physical entry to her residence matters. Once you carefully map out those facts, you suddenly notice how countless glaring mysteries surrounding this case perfectly align into one logical conclusion. First puzzle, how could an intruder bypass that massive iron barrier while leaving zero trace of a violent breach? With the right metal in hand, you casually twist the lock, slip right inside, and secure it again You leave 0 scratches. You make absolutely 0 sound. Bystanders notice nothing unusual, giving detectives literally 0 shattered glass or broken hinges to analyze afterwards. Second mystery: why did the culprit blindly kill the front lens before carrying out the extraction? Furthermore, how could they magically pinpoint the exact security device that needed immediate blinding, having bunked on that estate, or wandering those exact gardens for countless weeks? Completely reveals every hidden lens's blind spot. You inherently understand that taking out the main entryway monitor instantly creates a perfect shadow. Those rear perimeter sensors triggered absolutely 0 alarms during that terrifying late evening when the target went missing. Whoever meticulously orchestrated this hit fully grasped the surveillance layout. Third major anomaly: why did that frightening demand letter specify her smartwatch and exterior lighting? Those specific facts remain totally hidden from the press for 4 days post-incident. Occupying the same breathing space as the victim guarantees you intimately recognize every single piece of technology she operates. Such intimate knowledge requires deep personal history, spatial closeness, and lingering behind those very gates. Fourth puzzle: how did our ghost successfully locate and cut the power grids that detectives suspect went offline during the snatching? Local Sheriff Chris Nanos admitted to National Broadcasting Company journalists that task forces actively probed potential signal-blocking tech or deliberate grid tampering tactics. Cops treated a heavily tampered circuit panel as highly crucial. Residing at a given address for months automatically burns the exact location of electrical panels into your brain. You cannot glean such deep intel from a brief walkabout. It demands residency. Fifth dilemma: what precisely compelled the predator to visit the estate prior to the main extraction? Physically approaching her front porch, spotting the lens, then rapidly retreating. Even possessing a mental blueprint from past employment, a smart operator does a dry run to ensure that recording equipment hasn't shifted angles, guaranteeing those outer barriers still run the same hardware, ultimately assuring the coast remains perfectly clear. We aren't watching a rookie wandering blind. We are witnessing an insider simply refreshing their obsolete floor plan, piece by piece. Each logistical riddle surrounding this flawlessly executed kidnapping screams one undeniable truth: the culprit intimately understood the residents. Never a random wanderer, nor a simple afternoon plumber, but rather an individual stationed there long enough, intimate enough, and permanently anchored enough to retain that tactical memory, long after they were officially terminated. Holding a physical masterway isn't some unrelated factor to memorizing the floor plans. They are literally the exact same issue. Whoever pocketed that brass entry piece naturally enjoyed the required hours, the absolute physical closeness, and the lingering opportunity, and sheer daily routine to absorb every dark secret. Those extortion letters essentially exposed a bitter dismissal and their underlying dynamic. We remained incredibly cautious today. Exactly like our approach during this whole true crime saga, avoiding purely speculative reasons since intent is often purely fabricated fiction. Plus, when discussing stakes this high, pushing a false theory does way more damage than simply confusing our viewership. It actually poisons the official hunt. However, we have officially reached the concluding chapter, so we must drop every single unvarnished theory onto the table. Primarily because the entire truth demands rigorous detective scrutiny. That specific deep dive report goes far beyond discussing some random maid. It absolutely transcends the concept of a simple lockpick. Listen closely, because everyone analyzing this update completely missed a crucial third detail. Nancy Guthrie actually terminated this individual. We are not talking about an amicable split or a contract expiring naturally, but an absolute firing. Consider the massive implications when piecing together our entire investigation, involving a suspect granted total access to her private residence while living right there. This individual studied her daily habits, figured out her security gadgets, potentially kept a spare house key, and suddenly got kicked out by the owner. For this specific suspect, breaking back inside would never feel like a complicated riddle needing an external solution. They already possessed all the required knowledge to simply walk right in. Though our team refuses to invent a reason why, finding the exact motive belongs to the police. But hear us out. Remember Harry Trombus telling Yahoo News how detectives established a solid behavioral theory early on, an assumption that continues to hold incredible weight today. He essentially highlighted an investigative angle that detectives have relentlessly pursued right from the very beginning of the ordeal. Whoever took Nancy away might not even be the exact same author behind those extortion letters. Expert Bob Cryer noted how real captors demanding a $6 million digital currency transfer always offer proof of life, something these messages lacked. Yet an attack fueled by bitter resentment, shared history, and getting fired. Settling a massive grudge doesn't need digital money to make sense. It merely demands a suspect with a dark history that suddenly hit a breaking point. Federal authorities are out there publicly operating. They are systematically tracking down absolutely everyone linked to her life, including builders and locals who relocated before her vanishing, compiling visitor logs, demanding identities, and chasing down old social connections defines this current aggressive strategy. Detectives utilize these exact tactics when suspecting an insider committed the crime, making the latest investigation claims extremely pivotal today. Assuming this mysterious individual truly exists without popping up on federal radars yet, a local resident around Tucson definitely knows the exact identity detectives are hunting. Her relatives keep repeating the absolute truth: somebody out there holds the missing piece. A local resident might unwittingly possess a vital clue without realizing its massive importance, and this rumor could finally crack the case. Here is what the grieving relatives desperately requested moving forward. Exactly 3 days before we filmed this, on March 21st, her relatives released 6 carefully crafted paragraphs aimed squarely at local area residents. Their message stated that they remain convinced locals across southern Arizona hold the vital answers necessary to finally solve this devastating tragedy. A silent witness is hiding the truth. The relatives pleaded for citizens to review their security videos, personal diaries, digital chats, and any seemingly random memories that could suddenly matter. Emphasizing that every tiny clue could break the case wide open, the family begged everyone to analyze 3 highly specific chronological blocks. We are looking at January 31st at night, the crack of dawn on February 1st, and a newly revealed time frame around late January 11th. County Sheriff Chris Nanos recently verified to news reporters how detectives strongly suspect this was a highly focused, deliberate attack. The chief investigator also admitted his team developed a solid working motive. However, he refuses to share those details openly to avoid compromising the ongoing manhunt. Without offering extra context, he chillingly cautioned locals that the perpetrator might repeat their actions, reaffirming the theory about it being an isolated targeting. He stumbled slightly before revealing the genetic evidence pulled from the scene features several mixed profiles currently undergoing advanced genealogical tracing. This mirrors the exact advanced scientific approach. It is the same strategy that identified the Idaho College suspect, using months of lab research to reconstruct genetic blueprints from clues accidentally dropped. Ex-federal investigator Lance Lysing reminded reporters how this highly complex mapping requires immense patience. Dragging things out definitely complicates the entire operation, yet victory still remains entirely within reach. A massive $1.2 million bounty sits untouched. While the federal hotline stays open at 1-800-CALL-FBI, digital clues belong on their official federal website. Or you can ring 888-CRIME to drop whatever obscure details you possess. The massive mystery of the initial break-in completely persists. Authorities still cannot explain how an intruder slipped into her house after dark without breaking any doors. Nor do they understand how the suspect spotted the smartwatch. They perfectly navigated the motion sensors, avoided all security lenses, and manipulated the power boxes. Yet an anonymous informant just dropped a bombshell that could potentially solve every single missing piece, pointing straight at a former resident of the estate. This suspect memorized the layout, got painfully terminated from their position, probably kept a spare door key, and their hidden identity remains critical. If true, this rumor provides the exact lead federal agents must chase. So dial 1-800-CALL-FBM immediately because we are far from finished. This case teaches a heartbreaking but necessary lesson. Evil does not always arrive like chaos. Sometimes it comes quietly, prepared, patient, and frighteningly familiar. That is what makes this story so powerful. It reminds us that safety is not only about locks, cameras, or walls. True safety also depends on awareness, caution, and the people we allow close to our lives. One of the deepest educational messages here is that small details matter. A missed sign, a strange pattern, an uneasy feeling, or a piece of information that seems unimportant today may become the key to truth tomorrow. We should never underestimate observation, memory, or the courage to speak up. Sometimes justice begins with one person deciding not to stay silent. This story also speaks to the value of community. Families, neighbors, investigators, and ordinary citizens all become part of the search for truth. In moments of darkness, human responsibility matters. Looking out for one another is not a small act. It can save lives. Above all, this case reminds us to protect trust, cherish loved ones, and pay attention to what feels wrong. Because in real life, awareness is not fear. Awareness is love, responsibility. And sometimes the first step toward justice